You're tuned in to Season 3 of the Bird Joy Podcast, hosted by Dexter Patterson and Jason Hall. This podcast is for all the homies across the globe, a place to celebrate birds, community, and joy together. We're back with more stories from the birding world, more voices doing dope work in STEM, and more reasons to get outside and enjoy the birds. Are you ready for some bird joy? Let's go.
Today's guest is somebody whose work and wisdom have shaped the way that we see nature, not only as a destination, but as a powerful tool for healing, connection, and representation.
We're honored to be joined by Dudley Edmondson, a photographer, author, filmmaker, and speaker whose career spans over 30 years. Dudley's images and stories have taken him from the Arctic Circle to the Bahamas, always returning to the idea that nature belongs to all of us.
As one of the first to highlight African American involvement in the outdoors, Dudley's landmark book, Black and Brown Faces in America's Wild Places, helped pave the way for future generations of diverse outdoor leaders.
He's worked tirelessly to connect urban youth and youth of color to green spaces, and his newest work, People the Planet Needs Now, continues that legacy by amplifying the voices of 25 BIPOC scientists and climate activists.
Let's dig into some healing, some storytelling, representation, and why birds and wild places matter more now than ever. Dudley, welcome to the Bird Joy Podcast.
Hey, brothers, it's nice to be here. Thank you for that amazing introduction. I really appreciate it. Very nice, very nice.
We appreciate you. You know, I feel like the introduction only kind of does the justice for somebody of your stature and what you've meant to us and what you've meant to the world for Black and brown folks and outdoors. Jason, we were talking about before we actually started recording, you were at the top of our list when we started thinking about all of these different people that we need to interview for this podcast. Because I don't know, man, just the inspiration. We look at you like the OG, you know, the OG.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, I've been out here for a while. I mean, I've been watching birds for like 45 years, which sounds like, really? I think to myself, and it's like, yeah, that's as long as we've been at it. I mean,
math is mathin'.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I first started, I knew maybe two other people of color who were bird watchers. And I really never thought there'd come a day when like Black folks watching birds is like Black folks doing all kinds of things that we do. It's just part of kind of a regular thing that we do these days. And so it just still shocks me when I look on Instagram and I see, groups of Black folks dancing with binoculars and stuff. I'm going like, what? It's like, okay, all right. It's good.
We got to do it the way that we need to do it. That's really the key part of that. And joy is the key word, which is why we're here on this podcast. And, you've had, 45 years of watching birds, right? And so I assume that extended into your childhood. And then, this 30 plus years of kind of professionally taking pictures and writing and speaking. And like, what kind of started you on that path, whether it was photography or the outdoors? Like what was the genesis of who you are now?
I got into birds actually in junior high school back in the 70s. Did a book report on birds of prey. And I really got into like monkey eating and Philippine eagles and Marshall eagles, lammergeiers. I mean, it's like, I'm just a raptor nut anyway. Mm-hmm. Raptors and warblers are my favorite two things to photograph and watch. Like I said, 7th, 8th grade, I got into raptors, birds of prey and stuff. And it just kind of carried on. And then when I was in high school, my art teacher in my senior year, Mr. Gamble, Charles Gamble, he was a birder, and he had these mad skills that I was like, how do you do that? We were driving down the freeway. We raised a bunch of money in high school to go to Texas, to Aransas, to see whooping cranes back in 1979, 1980. We're driving. Some of us aren't old enough to be driving, but we're driving, Let's say we don't have our license yet.
It was a different time.
Yeah. And so we're driving down the highway in Texas. He's like driving along and go, Crescent Care. And I'm like, what? I mean, we're going 75 miles an hour. How did you identify that thing? It's top of a tree, quarter mile, half a mile away. And I said, man, I got to get them skills. I got to get those skills. And because it just amazed me. And so now I can do the same thing, just hear a tiny bit of a bird or get a little glimpse. And something I've discovered is that your brain kind of has a Rolodex of sounds and images that over 4+ decades for me. I mean, I've probably seen close to 1 million individual birds. When I think about, all the snow geese and sandhill cranes and countless, encounters with birds in my yard and in my travels. And so you build up this,
That
these
muscle
images,
memory.
and these sounds too. And so it's like, it feels like to me what happens is you hear a sound, then your brain goes through and finds a match, boom, and goes common yellowthroat, clay-colored sparrow, eastern kingbird. It's almost like I don't know, like a one-armed bandit. It's like you get the sound, and then on this side, boom, and then they match. And when they match, the words come out of your mouth. And that's kind of what I find, that's what happens with my brain these days, is I'm just referencing all of the sound and visuals that I've accumulated and then matching them with what's going on right in front of me. And then I can identify stuff. That's the best way to explain it for me as to how my brain works with birds. Yeah, I like to try to tell first birders, people that are getting into bird watching, if you're having trouble with songs and sounds, old school way I did was CDs. I used CDs, and I would listen to a CD in my car on my way to go birding. And so I'm listening, Connecticut warbler, and then they play the song. It might be hard to find those, but if you can find Stokes or Peterson,
they're still out there.
Okay.
Yeah. The player might be harder for people. Yeah, but you can get them online too and listen to them. So that's pretty sweet.
That's what I recommend. But I'm talking too much. Go ahead.
No, that's what we love. That's what we love is bringing on our guests to educate and uplift our audience and share their experience and their knowledge. And we haven't had somebody with your experience. I say you and Drew Lanham are probably the most experienced birders. A Christian too. Christian, you three, the ones that have been on this podcast with the most experience. So we really appreciate it. You talk a lot about nature's ability to heal. What was a moment, similar to you wanting to get this knowledge, but what was this moment that you realized that nature had this ability to heal you? What made that message personal for you?
I mean, as a kid, I lived in a household with folks, my parents had issues with alcohol. And I found that when I was outdoors a lot of times we'd go on weekends, we'd go on family picnics to a place called Hoover Reservoir. And then when I would go, we'd go to these places. I mean, I'm playing in the woods near our picnic area, or I'm fishing. Me, my dad, my brother are fishing for channel cats. My sister and mom are on the grill listening to, B.B. King and Bobby Blue Bland and James Brown. And that was life outside the house. It was really therapeutic to be in that space and just no drama. You just enjoying yourself, looking at birds and the leaves and all kinds of stuff. And so just healed my mind. But then when I would get back home, when we get back home, you get back into that situation, where they start bickering and maybe turning the bottle a little bit, and next thing you know, chaos everywhere. And so what I would do is I had aquariums and plants and terrariums and things in my bedroom. And so when things got hot, I would just go in the room, close the door, and play with my crappies, or I had piranhas, I had praying mantises, I had all kinds of stuff and plants. And so I would just lose myself in nature in my bedroom if I couldn't get out of the house on something. I discovered that fairly young. At 63, I'm still using nature to heal. It just is part of who I am. And I don't think I'll ever reach a point in my life where nature won't have great value to me. It just is. I mean, it's how I get through stuff. Yeah, and I recommend it to other people. It's a good way to get through stressful stuff.
Hey Dudley, I got something for you, man. You recognize this dude?
Oh, Bobby Blue Bland,
This is the blues you can use.
Yeah,
I just picked this up yesterday.
Really?
From
crazy.
From the homies at Drippin' Culture Coffee in Waukegan.
Nice.
I also got Johnny Taylor.
Johnny Taylor with that Jerry curl.
This the Lover Boy record.
Yeah.
And then I had to get the homie Lou Rawls too. I picked up that was yesterday, man. So when you said Bobby, I said, hold on, I gotta show him that I picked up some Bobby Bland yesterday.
Yeah, man. I mean, and that was, that's the age, growing up in the 70s, that's what you were listening to, all that kind of stuff, mixture of that. And as I got older, used to doing Parliament Funkadelic and Cameo and then I twitched into jazz. I got into Miles and Dexter and Coltrane. So it just kind of moved through. But when I was little, it was, you listen to what your parents listen to, right? My folks are from the South. My dad was from Nashville area, and my mom was from Asheville, North Carolina area. So, they were part of those great migrations out of the South that Black folks did. And they ended up in Central Ohio. And then the rest of us came along.
The rest of us came along. I like that. So your book, Black and Brown Faces in America's Wild Places, was ahead of its time. And well, you don't think so? I think so, right?
I do, but I don't like to say it out loud,
Okay, all right.
Well, we can say it for you.
Yeah, it is, right? It is.
Yeah.
So what originally inspired you to create that project, and what was the response like initially? And do you feel like that's changed over time since the book originally released?
The whatever behind it was, the impetus behind it was me trying to find more people like myself, more Black and brown folks who enjoy the out of doors. This was 2002 when I started working on that book. I had been working professionally as a wildlife photographer, from like 93 to that time. I was just 2002. I was exclusively professional wildlife photographer, traveling around the country, photographing mostly birds for field guides to, birds state by state, birds of Wisconsin, you probably have that little Stan Tequila field guide, those first editions of that book, Birds of Pennsylvania. I was the principal photographer for those books. And that was kind of the beginning. But what I found is when I was doing those books, man, there's nobody out there but me. I'm standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon. It's like, where the Black folks at? Where the brown folks at? And I thought to myself that I'm seeing diversity, but it is not people from the United States. It's people from Japan. It's people from Germany. It's people from France. It's people from, all these foreign countries, people coming to appreciate the intelligence, foresight, whatever of American to set aside public green space and wilderness areas, quote unquote, and these other countries don't have those expanses that we have. And so that ends up drawing people from other countries here. And so to me, it didn't make sense that our wilderness and public lands weren't as diverse as our cities. I'm thinking, I go to Philly or New York or Minneapolis and I see all kinds of people. But if I go to Yellowstone, Grand Canyon, Glacier National Park, I don't see that diversity, and it didn't make sense to me. So that was the reason that I decided I was going to go searching for Black and brown folks who felt the same way I did about our public lands, and in the process, hopefully, create a set of outdoor role models for Black and brown folks so they could see themselves in these spaces. Then perhaps create family traditions in the out of doors and get their children and their children's children interested in nature and protecting our public land. That was kind of the thing behind it. The book is actually being re-released in September. We have a 20th anniversary edition of that book coming out in September that I just finished up. And maybe I think the second half of your question, have things changed? And definitely things have changed, because when I first did the book, my publisher at that time didn't really understand the idea and the concept behind it. And part of it was because another organization, someone who did understand, a guy named Jim Mallman, who ran Watchable Wildlife, he understood it. So he sort of paid adventure to do the book, to do the printing, basically, of the book, editing and printing. But they never really marketed that edition of the book. Someone told the lady who ran the company at that time that the only people that would be interested in buying this book are Black people who enjoy the outdoors, and there are very few, if any. So basically, the book was a waste of their time, was what this person was trying to convince them. So ultimately, they never really did any marketing. They had sent me ideas about how they wanted to do that, put me on book tour, et cetera, but they never followed through. And that book really never got marketed. The only reason it's still selling today, I sold a couple of copies a day or so ago, is because it's finally reached its time. And over the years, people have become aware of it. Strangely enough, 20 years later, I'm still selling copies of the original version of the book.
Ahead of his time.
Yeah,
Ahead of his time.
Right.
So,
Wow.
Just weird.
It really makes me, you mentioned, Dudley, like how things are changing. Like, you're like, man, I see all these Black and brown people with binoculars and Black Birders Week again. I think there's a common theme. We'll be shouting them out probably all season 3, at least through the month of May here.
Yep.
This is like, I see that. I see some change as well. And I've only been doing this a decade or so. You know, when I think about when I first started birding, the research showed that 6% of Black people identified as birders, right? And we've seen that number creep up into the 20s now. Why do you think, you know, with your book coming back out, 20-year anniversary, why do you think representation in nature and conservation spaces still matters so much in 2025?
It will always matter, because the fact that we live in a Eurocentric society, a white male-dominated society, and if we don't have role models for women, for queer folks, for people of color, it's, you know, I won't say that people won't be able to necessarily imagine themselves doing the things, but it certainly helps to push people in that direction. I think role models are always important. I oftentimes say that if every NBA player was a white dude, would so many Black youth be interested in being in the NBA? It's role models. They see young men who look like them, potentially have similar backgrounds, and that's the reason that they're interested in it. If all scientists were Black people, if all birders, if all airline pilots were Black people, and they were constantly in front of the general public, it would probably get Black people thinking, oh, you know, I want to do this thing. And so role models are extremely important. They will always be important. And regardless of the current administration's efforts to erase Black and brown folks from history and undermining the contributions of women, shutting down all of the, you know, the African American Museum and all of these things that they're trying to do, it's not going to really change anything. People will still, in fact, I think it's only going to, in my personal opinion, the more you try to deter people from doing something, the more they're going to want to do it. So the more you anti-Black and anti-BIPOC, the more people are going to, you're just going to lose that battle. I have a lot to say on it. And again, as an old guy, I've seen a lot. I feel like the war on, I'm drifting off here a little bit, but the war on people of color and our contributions to history and our population demographic shifts is a waste, because people of the global majority are just that. It's all of us. People of European ancestry make up barely 15% of the entire global population. Barely 15% European people of European ancestry. The rest are us, Black folks, Africans, Chinese people, well over 1 billion folks, indigenous people on every continent. Brown people are the global majority. And I
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes will try to get people to never use the word minority. You're not a minority now. You've never been a minority. Always been part of the global majority. Do not use that word ever.
Did you have you
There's
seen that?
nothing minority about
Yeah,
us.
yeah. I
Nothing.
was gonna say, have you seen that clip from Daniel Kaluuya, the actor? He goes, "There's over 1 billion black people. There's nothing minor about that. I'm not taking anything minor." And he was speaking about what he expects moving into his role as an actor and what he expects to be paid and to be recognized for. And he was like, "No, we are not a minority." It's such a powerful clip. You were
Yes.
speaking, and I could hear that in my head. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because again, people of European ancestry are a global minority. They are in my opinion, a true minority. And so people of color, we need to see ourselves collectively having power as a group of people. And yes,
Mm-hmm.
we have our cultural differences, our ideologies, our places of origin, but we have more power as a group. It's no different than French, Russian, Germans, Brits coming to the United States, dumping that and becoming white. If we became people of the global majority, we would have a lot more power that we could wield. Again, I'm not saying you should leave your cultural heritage on the side. I'm just saying that if we could come together on some common issues, I think we would do a much better job of wielding and holding power in the United
Sure.
States. That's not what
Sure.
we came here to talk about.
Facts,
No,
though.
that's all good.
Facts.
I did want to ask because you were talking about the representation still being important because young black and brown folks in that global majority do need role models. But like, who were your role models coming up? Like, I know you were probably in some spaces where you didn't have anyone that looked like you. So how did you find folks to lean on to find direction and honestly validate the path that you were on?
The first book, the Black and Brown Faces American Wild Places, did help me validate that because I did go on this journey of discovery to find other people like myself. That helped. But when I was growing up, I really didn't have really any role models who looked like me. I mean, I was people you probably never heard of: Marlon Perkins, Jim Fowler from Wild Kingdom, Marty Stauffer from Wild America. These were all white men who were David Attenborough has always been a hero, and you know him.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, you usually had white men who were and are still predominantly seen as the authorities on everything, nature and the environment, even how we behave in the outdoors is a template that was set by white males. And we still mostly operate on that with that template. I didn't have any people like that, but people who I did see as role models, for better or worse, people like Miles Davis, because he did his thing. He did not care what you thought of him ever.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is super important. If you're going to be an individual, you need to not give a damn what other people think about you. As long as you know you're doing right by yourself, by the people around you, by the rules and laws of your country of origin, then do not trouble yourself worrying about what other people think about you. That was a lesson that I picked up from Miles and ultimately put me in a lot of spaces where I was the only brown person, black person there. And, sometimes it was a bit uncomfortable, but, as I get older, I get bolder. And I really,
I love it.
where I don't really care. I just do my thing.
You've earned that. You've earned that. Experience grants you that right, in my opinion. And you've mentioned your travels. You've done so many collaborations across the country. What's a moment, a story that kind of sticks out from you from that work that you've been able to do?
Just really recently, I was in Huntsville, Alabama, with Black Kids Adventures with a husband and wife couple, Zenobia Stevens and her husband, George. And they're running these camps for Black families to learn about nature and experience nature in a comfortable setting. I mean, I believe, if I recall her, she said what was behind it, the reasons behind them starting it was that Black kids in summer camp just was not a good experience. And they have 3 sons, and she just felt as though if they could create a space where Black kids felt welcomed and appreciated and listened to in the out of doors, that it would be helpful. So they've created this thing where they have entire families coming out and learning how to set up tents and build fires and s'mores, and so I visited with them. I want to say maybe last month we went on a 2 or 3 day trip in the I forgot the name of the space, but I thoroughly enjoyed being with these folks and, sharing a little knowledge about the book and some of my nature knowledge. And we did some bird identification stuff. And so anytime I have an opportunity to work with people of color in the outdoors is a gift to me. And I feel as though I am hopefully helping to build a legacy within these families and of outdoor traditions, so that, again, their children, their children's children are out there on public lands and enjoying nature and getting some of that therapy, perhaps, that I got and still get from having a connection to nature. So, yeah, anytime I'm out with Black and brown folks doing stuff in the outdoors, to me is a good day.
Blessing. You're giving them memories to hold on to, and I love that they're focusing on the family, because I think a lot of times when you talked about going to Yellowstone and all these different places and not seeing people that look like you, back in the day, our people weren't allowed in the national parks, or we had to go to the Black only part, or we could only go on a certain day, right? So a lot of times families grew up feeling like that ain't for us. And then you had the real situations in woods with lynchings and violence and different things. So that division where you talked about, what if the global majority came together? They've worked really hard to keep us separated from things. They've worked really hard to keep us and not give us access to a lot of these places for good reason, because they know that it's healing. They know that it's good for you. They know that we came here because we were good in the outdoors. You know what I mean? We were the best farmers. We were the best at all of these things. It wasn't that we never done it. They've just worked really hard to make us feel not welcome there, to make us feel like this isn't for us, which is unfortunate. And I just love that you're seeing that work and seeing the dedication to the youth. Really lights me up. Jason, I know you can speak to this. When I'm leading a bird walk and I see the little baby birders, I try to spend as much time with the kids as I can. And I listen to their because they're so curious. That's what I love about kids, especially little Black and brown babies. They're so curious, and they light up about everything around them. And when they got somebody that looks like them, that can answer their questions, it changes them. It changes the way that they see that experience. It gives them a little bit of agency, and they go back home and they're like, you know what, mama? You know what, dad? I really had fun today. We should go back outside. And ultimately, that's what we want, right? We want to break that cycle. So thank you, my brother, for doing that, and for all you've been doing all these years to make sure that, our babies see that and families get that opportunity. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, I mean, and to me, part of what I just have seen is people don't realize how therapeutic and healing the connection to nature is until they have that experience. And I know, Jason, you're in the new book, People the Planet Needs Now, and you talked about those experiences that you've witnessed with young people and how it does change their world perspective. I mean, when you realize that is something you can access and you don't have to necessarily pay for it, you don't have to pay a therapist, you don't even have to ask permission. If you need that healing, you just go get it. I mean, I can think of so many times when I've had issues. I remember my brother called me back January 2018. He said, we lost dad today. And I was just, of course, devastated. But within a half an hour, I was outside. I was walking in knee-deep snow in the woods with my camera and just losing myself in the shadows of trees being cast on the snow, listening to ravens and chickadees. flitting around in the woods and just needing that therapy, needing to process what I had just heard. Maybe 2 weeks before that, I had talked to my dad on the phone, and just is so healing. It is unbelievable how healing connection to nature is. I mean, if I didn't do anything for the rest of my life but connect Black and brown folks to nature, I would be a happy man.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah. I say it all the time, man. I gotta figure out a way.
That's the dream, man. That's the dream for real.
It is. Yep.
You created art installation for the Minnesota Marine Art Museum called Northern Waters. It's really mesmerizing. Folks get a chance to take a look at it. Some of the photography and some of the other installation pieces there. Some of the media. What did you? That was back in 2021, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. What did you hope folks got from that? Because that was, the summer of 2020 was heavy for all of us, and that continued through COVID and everything. So, I'm curious, what did you hope folks got from that as you put that installation in?
I always saw it as a therapy piece, as I do with most of my photography work. I see it as a potential therapy access point for folks. I wanted people to be able to come and look at that and be calm and stress-free and thoroughly enjoy it. And I have part of the show I have here in my office, and I had been trying to figure out how to get it in galleries near George Floyd Square. I live here in Minnesota, and I felt as though I wanted to put it in a gallery or space somewhere in that area that's been heavily traumatized by the murder of George Floyd, and just people could wander in to that gallery space and just have a little bit of healing. And I haven't totally given up on finding a space to do that, as well as wanting to put parts of it into schools that were predominantly youth of color, some schools they go to, having some of it there as well. So, I mean, it's always, like I said, it's always been a therapy thing. I mean, I know that being in the outdoors is very therapeutic to me, and the process of photographing wildlife and nature and natural landscapes is therapy to me. And I feel as though the end result of my photos can become therapy for other people.
Really hope people can go look it up, because it still is available online. And there's one picture I want to ask you about from there, if you don't mind. If I can get a moment, Dexter, called The Coldest Day on Lake Superior.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That picture just gives me, every picture in the gallery gives you emotion, is what people would know. It literally makes me feel things in my chest. Obviously, I went straight to the one of the great gray owl, right? I was checking that out, and the colors in the background of that one are just tremendous. Makes the owl pop. But that Coldest Day on Lake Superior, feels like just, I don't know, it makes me feel peaceful, but I'm packed full of potential energy. It makes me feel all right, this is how I'm feeling deep down on the inside, maybe on some of my worst days, but I know all this ice and this mist is gonna melt, and there is power in there somewhere. That's what that would make me feel, right? And I would really look forward to having that somewhere where people could look at that and say, man, look at that. Look at our planet and where I am on it. It just, I'm sorry, I had to take that, because I didn't know about this installation until it popped up, and Dexter had done some research, and I'm checking it out. And I'm like, this is wild. So yeah, man, did you know, how did that picture make you feel when you took it, when you processed it?
Yeah. I mean, it's what you're seeing in there is something, an effect, phenomenon that's called sea smoke, which is when the water is warmer than the air, you get condensation. Sometimes you even get if the wind's going, you'll get what looks like little tornadoes or whatever of that sea smoke whirling around on the lake. And Duluth has weird weather in the winter where it's warmer by Lake Superior because of the water than it is inland. And probably on that day, it might have been 10, 15 below zero. So you're getting that sea smoke, and then and what looks like mist. And then, as you can see, all that ice is packed on the rocks and things like that, from the wave action coming in and covering plants, and then they freeze these really big, almost look like ice sculptures. That was, I got some frostbite on that photo.
I bet, man.
What is crazy though is like it's still perfectly clear. You wasn't shaking or nothing.
Yeah. Great photo, man.
Dudley, you like when you look at this, bro. Like as I was putting together questions, like these photos are insane. Like it's just like you're so good at what you do. So yeah, we'll definitely link to this so folks can go and just see this. And that great gray, it's in the rule of thirds with the background is red. Like you got the reds in there, and then you can see the snow falling. This is insane. Wow.
Yeah, that photo is crazy. That's red osier dogwood in the background, and that photo I think I took in the Saxon Bog. I'm sure I did, which is maybe some birders have heard of it here in northern Minnesota. Famous in the winter for all kinds of stuff, boreal chickadees, boreal owls, and stuff. And so, but that photo has been this organization called Vital Impacts. It's international wildlife conservation organization that sells limited edition prints of wildlife all over the world. Rhinos and elephants and polar bears, and my great owl somehow is in there. And for whatever reason, people all over the planet love that photo. They've sold tens of thousands of dollars of that photograph of that great owl.
Look at it.
Crazy to me. I mean,
look at it. It's beautiful. It's perfect. Like it's
for me, I had to, I know it sounds terrible, but it's just a photo of an owl to me. But people love it. I mean, I remember the first time somebody asked me for a copy of it, and I said, I don't do print material. Most of my photos end up in books, encyclopedias, magazines, things like that. And so, but this company reached out to me and asked me for some photos. They liked that one. And they have just sold, like I said, thousands and thousands of dollars prints of that photo that go to protecting polar bears and white rhinos and everything else. So it's been an honor to participate in that, and has given me international recognition that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't said yes to that. So I really appreciate what Vital Impacts has done for my career.
Shout out to your Just an Owl picture.
Yeah.
Oh man, you see, Dudley don't even know how much of a legend he is. It's so funny because like I remember when the first I met you on that trip in 2022 on Little St. Simon's Island, and all of a sudden I was watching PBS in American Outdoors where Baratoon Thurston came on, and I was like, that's the homie Dudley.
Yeah.
Man, I said, I know that dude. What was that experience like, man? What was that like?
Yeah, it was interesting because I had never heard of him really. I had to do some research before we met. This crew of 12, 15 people show up in Duluth. First they wanted to come to my house, and I was like, I ain't letting all y'all fools in my house. Then we were going to maybe do backyard, but we ended up going to Hawk Ridge, and I found a really quiet spot for us to do it. But it was interesting because to be on set with another Black person, with an all-white production team, and so there was this thing between Baratundi and I that was, it was like just two brothers hanging out. And these folks were able to capture it and stuff. But I remember they didn't want me to meet him before they started rolling. So they wanted my reaction to be genuine. And so he rolled up, got out of the car, and it's like, this first time I've seen you, first time you've seen me, and I think it worked well on camera. But yeah, I mean, I was taking him birding and checking stuff out and listening for birds, and he seemed to really enjoy it. And I enjoyed the time that I spent with him, and really, really enjoyed seeing the episode. And the fact that he got a second season, I think was so critical to the popularity of that series was that it wasn't about nature. It was about people's emotional connection to nature. And that's what the show was really about. And that's what made a difference. And I think that's why
people could see themselves in those situations, or at least envision or want to try to go have something like that for themselves. That's beautiful.
Yep.
Yeah. Your new book, People the Planet Needs Now, features BIPOC scientists and activists. Yours truly is in there. Thank you very much. It was an incredible honor to be part of that. Certainly encourage folks to go out and grab it. Why was it important to create this now, right? Because you talked earlier about your previous book and reprinting that because the times have caught up to the genius of that book. And so why was it important to create this one now? And how did you choose who to feature?
I felt like when you think about science and the environment, you don't necessarily see Black and brown people aren't the first things pop in your head. And I felt like we needed a perspective from folks who oftentimes, let's just talk about, environmental justice. We're the front lines of the negative fallout from things with lead pipes and contaminated communities and pollution and asthma that affects Black and brown folks because of our proximity to some of these spaces and things. And so I felt like we needed, from that side, we needed to hear from the people who are being affected by this stuff, as opposed to hearing some dude who doing a report or whatever associated with some college or university. Let's hear from the people on the ground in those spaces. With the scientists, it's like, I just feel like yourself, for instance, and others in the book, we need to hear from and see Black and brown scientists, again, as role models, but also just that we can't really look to white people for the answers to all of our issues on this planet, in the world, in this country. And I sometimes will say that to predominantly white audiences: you don't have all the answers. You know it and I know it. Why not have a collective group of people from different backgrounds, different experiences, different perspectives about how to solve this issue, whatever this issue is? Because, my lived experience is different from your lived experience. And I might have an approach that you've never even been able to conceptualize or whatever. And let's just say, if you're going to be doing some environmental restoration, how are you not having indigenous people at the table every single time you do restoration of an environment, which you're on stolen land? And so why not include the people who were the stewards of that land prior to your theft? Include those people in how do we restore this space? How do we do a better job of making this somewhat like it once was, so that it can be here for future generations of people? To me, it just didn't make sense to have issues that affect everybody be only seen from a Eurocentric perspective. And so I felt like I needed to do that. And so that was, a lot of the reasons behind the book.
Love it. So hopefully that's what people take away from it. They see all these, Black and brown folks, from talking about climate change to industrial waste to social injustice and poverty and all these challenges that our world faces. They're all daunting. And you were able to shine a light on 25 heroes out there that are pushing back. I think that's fantastic. What was it like for you gathering those personal stories from all these, we can call them heroes, from across the country, even in the Philippines? What was it like for you? What stood out most to you as you listened to all these voices?
Everybody's story is interesting to everybody else. That is to say, my story is not that interesting to me, but my story is interesting to you. And so I understood that, because I've lived my life. And so I'm not necessarily discovering anything new, versus you talking to me and you're learning things about me that may influence your life. And so I understood the power of story, and I understood that when you do it well in a very personal way, that it makes that story interesting to other people. And so part of that process was me making sure I did not put my spin on who you are. You know what I'm saying? So I did not let my editors and my publisher go in and third person people's stories. Because to me, that feels extractive, disingenuous, and disrespectful. And so I wasn't going to talk to Jason and then say, Jason's blah blah blah. He's blah. It's like I talked to Jason. I mean, the first time we really talked. I mean, we talked in we're on the island and stuff. But the first time we really sat down and talked was during the interview. And it's like I don't know Jason well enough to go tell his story to the world in my words. That's something wrong with that. And so I didn't want to be part of it. And I told them, and they actually took, and it might have been your chapter, if I'm not mistaken, with the first one I got back, that they had changed into third person. And I was like, you can throw that away. I said, I'm not signing off on that. That's not what Jason said. He said what he said. Nobody knows Jason better than Jason. I don't know Jason like Jason knows Jason. So let him tell the world who he is. That's not I don't get that honor. The only honor I get is to set the table for Jason to tell the world who he is. And that's the only honor I get.
The whole book has that vibe with every chapter. And I actually keep it next to my bed. Okay. Because it's for me, and I think I've mentioned this when I kind of talked about it on socials a little bit, it gives you this connectivity to other people that are trying to go along their own journey and bring the rest of us with them. And it's incredibly inspiring, like, especially on those days where I'm like just tired or something, I can crack that bad boy open and read, maybe even about someone I've already read about. And the perspectives are quite different too, right? Because you mentioned earlier, we are on stolen land. And I always find that part of this story undertold in terms of how Black Americans approach that and how should we think about that. And there's a couple folks in your book that give some good perspective on what they're trying to do to keep spaces and restore spaces. And it gives me a time to think about, as a Black American, how do I support that, right? What is my mission doing that is overlapping with that? Appreciate you making sure that the folks helping to get the book out kept those stories raw and natural. Like that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, Nico Alexandri in California, he says, we are stolen people on stolen land. Yeah. And so thinking about what do you do with that? Being a stolen person on stolen land. How do you do a better job of making sure that future generations of Americans understand that and try to do whatever we can, land back, anything we can to right some of those wrong, and just to be good stewards. Just to be good stewards. That is not, to me, that's not rocket science. It's not a hard task to be a good steward of the land and treat people like you want to be treated. Those aren't terribly difficult things to do. It's just that it's not necessarily easy emotionally sometimes to do those kinds of things. And the actual task of doing it is not, I don't think, is that difficult,
Sure. I was going to ask, so all of these perspectives kind of rolled in over time, and we started the podcast by jokingly calling you the OG, right? You've been out in these streets and these forests longer than Dexter and I, right? And so with that though brings perspective, but it also, we're wondering two things. One, how do you stay inspired and creative after all you've done all these years in the field? And if you are looking at someone who is just getting into that, just getting started, just getting that taste of that joy, and that desire to make change, how do you stay inspired? And what advice would you give them as they start off on their own path?
To me, nature is such a joyful and complex sort of space that I really rarely find a moment when I'm uninspired. It just is rare. In fact, I don't know that I'm ever uninspired. I mean, and I spent a lot of time in my own backyard. The last couple of days, I've been setting up a bird feeder with perches because I'm starting to do some wildlife specific photography again. And like I said, raptors and warblers are the two things I want to focus on. And, even just farting around in my backyard, I'm just purple finches and pine siskins or, hammering my feeders. They're just inspiring and interesting things to see. I get downies, harries, pileates, and red bellies every day. I mean, and I don't have...
we know you sent us a video with 6 pileates just chilling in your yard.
I was like,
the world isn't that big. It's just that I have created habitat in this space.
You know what they want. Yeah.
And like this year, I'm planning on redoing my pond and making it 4 or 5 times bigger than it is, because I think that will also create more opportunities for me to photograph wildlife. I'm never uninspired by nature. I mean, even if it's just a rainstorm, the same cardinal I see every day, whatever, turkey vultures floating over the house and so it's just, I don't know. But I'm all, I'm into butterflies and plants. I mean, birds, butterflies, and wildflowers are the three things that keep me going all the time. I mean, I switch, right now it's bird season, but come mid-June or so, I switch over to pollinators and plants because birds are, busy doing that mama and papa thing.
Nesting
and they don't have
season.
time. Yeah, exactly. They got time for your feeders. And so, till about mid-August, I'm not really birding. And then, migration starts again in mid-August around here. Anyway, we start to get Sharpies and broadwings start moving. And then as we get into September, I'm probably in my yard all the time because you just never know. Scarlet tanagers and rose-breasted grosbeaks coming in, eating stuff out of I have a spotted touch-me-not plant that creates these little seed pods, and it just draws in tons of rose-breasted grosbeaks that come in and eat those things. I'm always inspired. And for young people, just the more time you spend in the outer doors, the better you'll feel, the more you learn. I'm more of an independent thinker because I understand how nature works. I don't necessarily rely on human beings for knowledge and learning. Oftentimes, when I'm in the outer doors, I'm like an equalizer. I turn humans down and human constructed things down, and I turn nature up like a volume button. When I'm outdoors, I turn down traffic and people and dogs, and I turn up birds and, just turn that volume up. That just keeps me engaged the whole time I'm there. And I'm always looking for opportunities to connect with nature no matter where I go. If I'm in bigger city and I'm waiting on an Uber, one time I was doing that and I'm standing outside in a downtown area, just surrounded by skyscrapers waiting. And there was this male house finch singing on the top of this bare tree.
You speaking my language.
And because of the buildings, right? Voice was just echoing through the entire canyon of buildings. And to me, nature becomes a portal out of spaces, out of human constructed spaces. I find that I can zoom in on a monarch or a house finch, even a house sparrow, and totally sort of portal out of wherever I am and kind of lose myself in that connection to nature. And I just can't speak enough about how therapeutic nature can be for folks. And if you haven't connected, please do, because it will change your life.
Wow. Dudley, man, I can't thank you enough for sharing your journey, sharing your joy for nature with us today. Your work continues to open up doors and minds across generations. And I just want to say thank you. You are a huge, huge inspiration, man. Yeah. Like, seriously.
I just do my thing. I at this age, I feel like I'm a tool in a toolbox. If you need me, do whatever you need me to do. Because at this point, I feel like most of what I need to be doing is giving and not necessarily taking from people. At my age, I need to be giving knowledge. Also, at my age, I have to realize that unsolicited knowledge is not, you know what I'm saying? I find a lot of times it's like, I didn't ask you for your advice. My bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And so I have to be careful about that. But yeah, I still see myself as a tool in your toolbox. And if you need something, reach out to me anytime and I will do my best to grant it, give it, share it, whatever it is that I need to do to help.
Appreciate you so much.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. Where can folks be keeping up with you and what you're doing?
Instagram is the spot that because I'm a visual person, is the spot that I probably be doing most of my announcements about things.
Okay.
So that, and my website, dudleyedmondson.com is a good spot as well. So yeah.
Yeah. We'll put all that in the show notes, man. Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Dudley, thank you so much for joining us today on the Bird Joy podcast. We hope our listeners enjoyed exploring the world of nature and birding with Dudley today. Shout out to my BIPOC flock. We have so many things going on throughout the rest of the spring and into the summer. So you can visit that at bipocbirdingclub.org.
Awesome. And until next time, homies, you can check check us out in Philly at In Color Birding Club, incolorbirding.org. Plenty of things going on here in the spring, summer, and before you know it, we'll be in the fall. So
crazy. Please share, subscribe, and shout out the podcast to all your fellow birders and nature lovers. Also, make sure y'all go follow Dudley on his Instagram. Help us spread a little bird joy.
And get that book too, right?
Yeah, make sure you
I'm
go
telling
get
you, it's an
that
incredible book, and it sounds like we're going to have another release of the original. So that sounds like it's going to be in September. So we'll get that too. But Dudley, again, thank you so much, sir, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.